Hi, I'm Colin, and who are you?
I am Mikkael Kohn. I'm the rabbi of the Jewish community in Bern, and I have my wife with me since she has even better things to say about peace than I do. And my wife is Dorit, and we have 3 kids now. We just got our third kid about a day and a half ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And we've been in Bern for 3 years. I'm originally from Norway, from Oslo, and grew up there. I spent 3 years in Manchester studying business. My plan was to get rich, and then I decided not to, and I became a rabbi instead. And so I spent 8 years in Israel studying rabbinics, and then I heard of a very nice, strange community in Bern, and that's how we ended up here.
Thank you for the insight of who you are. Can you tell me, Rabbi Mikkael, are you a believer that peace is possible?
Yes, I mean, I think one has to say yes, and I think maybe also one has to maybe be loose on the definition of belief. Just like with God, I think it's not just as we would say in English, a propositional statement. It's a relationship, and so belief in God relates and says something about the relationship we have to this person. And I think belief, my belief in peace also has something to do with the way I relate to peace and trust and hope, maybe as much as believe in peace.
So how would you say you relate to peace then?
I try to relate to peace in a way which I have from the Jewish tradition, where it says that the people with knowledge in the Jewish tradition, in general, but people with knowledge, says the Jewish tradition, increases the peace in the world. And it says it's a funny way of saying it. Instead of saying that, it should really be saying that the people with knowledge create peace instead of making more peace. So I think that one, and then the question is, of course, from the Jewish tradition, what do people with knowledge do? And in the Jewish tradition, people with knowledge, they bring opinions. That's what we do in Judaism. We discuss and we debate, and we even the stuff we don't, even the decisions we don't agree with, we bring them on the table in order to discuss them. And I think one of the things that I personally got from the Jewish tradition, which is very strong there, and that's the pluralism, the ability to see that different opinions hold weight, different opinions have importance, even when we don't hold by them, even when we don't agree with them. They are still important enough to say, you know what, this has to be brought to the table, this has to be recorded, it has to be written down, and we have to respect it as an opinion and a viewpoint and a perspective. And when we then increase perspectives in the world, increase opinions, even when they are different, and even when they are contrary to each other, if they are treated in a manner where everyone says, you know, this holds weight, this is important, I don't agree, but it's important, then that should increase world peace in the world, says Judaism.
Okay, so just if I understand that correctly, if we accept each other for everybody's opinions, if we accept each other's opinions, then it should help out with world peace. It doesn't matter if we like the opinion or not.
I think Judaism goes a step further, and I think it teaches us something very important, which is forgotten nowadays. If you listen to world leaders, there is personally, I think there is way too much talk about tolerance. We are currently in our world, we're in love with tolerance. and we hear about it so often. And respect is, I must say, it's cute, but it's, to me, unless you define what respect is, what does it mean, what does it entail, i'm not I'm not really such a fan. Tolerance sounds great. The problem is that you can only tolerate something that you don't accept. We don't tolerate things that we are gleichgültig, that we are irrelevant, that we don't have an opinion about, for example. So you can't say that, yeah, I tolerate stuff that I don't really care about. That doesn't make any sense. The things that we tolerate are the things that actually matters to us, but that we don't like. And I think a step towards more peace in the world is if we focus on pluralism instead of tolerance. And if we focus, and so what is pluralism? So pluralism, I think, has the advantage to compared to tolerance, that pluralism is about finding the good stuff. Pluralism is about saying, there are more than one thing that has value. So pluralism is about finding value in other things, other opinions, in other lifestyles. So we often talk about our societies being pluralistic, and we usually only mean really that there's a variety of things. But that's not really, if that's not really only what pluralism means. Pluralism and being pluralistic also means that you're able to find value in others, in other opinions, in other perspectives, in other faiths, in other lifestyles. And I think that's really, that is a lot more ambitious than being tolerant.
So to break it down again, me as a simple person, if I can find worth in everybody else's opinions and lifestyle, and not accept them, tolerate them, even go so far as to cherish them, then we are a step closer. So everybody accepts and cherishes each other as a way of life, and we let everyone be themselves, then we are nearer to world peace. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I think we would be far better off if that is something that we try to keep in mind. I would have to qualify it and challenge it a little bit, because to me, even though it sounds really rosy and wonderful, there has to be limits. And peace is not. I don't think peace is achievable if we are if there are no limits to our pluralism. The peace is also not possible unless there are limits to our tolerance as well. And this is something which was brought up by the philosopher Karl Popper, for example, about 60, 70 years ago. The paradox of tolerance, he called it, is that in order to be tolerant, you at some point have to be intolerant, because there are people and movements in our world, forces in our world, that is challenging our belief and wish for tolerance. And there are forces in our world that are challenging my desire for pluralism. And these forces, they have to be fought, and they can't be fought with pluralism and tolerance. And these forces, these destructive forces, like racism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, they have to be fought with intolerance. And so anti-Semitic and racist speech, for example, cannot be fought by tolerance. They have to be fought by us, by the tolerant society, saying, you know what, here goes our limit. We can't stretch our tolerance to include you guys, or to include this type of speech, because if it does, then our tolerant society is going to be less tolerant than what it was before we were tolerant towards you. So at some point we have to limit our tolerance, and I also have to limit my pluralism. But it does mean, and it's a huge challenge, and that's where I think it's very valuable, even though I don't know exactly how far my pluralism goes. it is extremely challenging and worthwhile to keep a check and balance, or to check your pluralism once in a while, to see, okay, where do I have my limits? Are they too strict? Do I have enough? Is there enough that I value? And the things that I now currently place outside of my pluralism um, view, is there maybe there's something about what I now find outside of the boundaries. Maybe there's something in there that I've missed. One of the things that this focus on pluralism does is that it takes you away from your own viewpoint, because there's no way you're gonna find value in someone else's views unless you actually move into those views and take a look at, okay, what actually are those views, not from my point of view, but for the person who holds it. So one is, hopefully then there's another challenge there, which is to move away from your own views and your own world into someone else's world, and say, okay, what does that actually mean for that person? And to continuously strive even to this even to towards the things, and to the things that you might not find acceptable and find valuable, to now and again say, you know what, let's take a look, maybe there's something about that I missed, and maybe there's something there that actually does hold some form of value. So it is it's luckily not a binary thing, and luckily it's something which can change, which will also improve ourselves.
I've got to say, it doesn't sound as easy for world peace when you put it like that. It sounds a lot more complicated because we also with the boundaries, and then who decides what the boundaries are for everybody, and 7.6 billion people. I mean, whoa, yeah, that's
These are huge questions, and they are and I think we have seen already, peace is not going to come easy. And so I don't think that, yes, but I don't think it's like an eye opener or a shock to people when they realize that, you know what, this sounds really, whatever this Michael guy is talking about sounds really difficult. And I think we've realized that already, that it's gonna take time. So I'm not, but it's true. It does sound it's difficult, and I think that's yeah, that's acceptable. There's another source that I wanted to, that my wife actually just reminded me now. In Judaism, we have in Judaism a long tradition of saying that there are 70 faces to the Torah. The Torah is our Bible, the 5 books of Moses, and we have a saying in Judaism, which is a couple of thousand years old, that there are 70 faces to the Torah, which again speaks of this pluralism, where there are 70 faces, 70 ways, perspectives that are equally right, or at least all of them are right in some way. And this is always held up in Judaism as a way of trying to place value on pluralism, and giving other perspectives, finding value in others' perspective. But again, like I said, there is also this understanding that there's not 71. 70 is a concrete number, and there's a cutoff point there somewhere. And it's but again, you're right, that one question that we have to deal with, and we are dealing with that in our secular societies today. We're dealing with the question of who's setting these boundaries, and why are they set where we are. And they're dealt with in all of our Western liberal countries that value tolerance and value liberalism, and especially with one thing like hate speech. What is hate speech? Where does the limit? Where is the limit drawn from hate speech to just saying, voicing your opinion? As a Jew, this is something which is top of our agenda. This is something which currently in Europe at the moment, most Jews are finding it troubling how much is being accepted as under the right of free speech, which is important. But at some point, there are limits to our free speech as well. And the different limits. There are limits to what we are allowed to say about monarchies, for example, in Europe. There are limits, and then there are limits to what we're allowed to say about minorities. So when does free speech move over to hate speech, which is criminal? This is that's not easy. So these are questions that we are already dealing with. Yeah.
Do you in the Jewish belief, do you have any guidelines on who's allowed to decide what the limitations are? Is there any suggestions on who's going to decide? Is it going to be a religion, or is it going to be 7.6 billion? Is it going to be a democratic vote? Is it who's going to decide at the end of the day?
That is a wonderful question.
I mean, Michael, who are you going to listen to and say, okay, I'm going to accept your opinion to be the one of my limitations?
It's a wonderful question, Colin. You have to give me a couple of seconds to think about it.
No worries.
And now I'm going to confer with my assistant here. So we have both approaches. Okay, good point. So my wife said that in Judaism we have it's a similar issue of question of authority. Where does the authority of the rabbis come from? So in Judaism we have this notion that the rabbis are the ones leading the community, leading the Jewish people, in the sense that they are the ones making the rules. And it's quite clear that the rabbis are the ones making the rules. And the question is just what do they base their rules on? And that's not so easy to say. So that they are the ones, that the rabbis have been the ones writing the books for the last 2,000 years, which is now luckily changing. The women are finding their place and their voice in this legal structure, which is how we decide rules and regulations. And so the question is then, so the rabbis would have, the last 2,000 years, they would have written down the rules. But it's very clear, even from the oral Torah, written down about 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, it's a clear story about how the rabbis would write down a rule, and then they would, for the next year, they would observe the people, and they would see and check, okay, do the people actually accept this rule? Do they agree with what we just decided? And if the majority of the people don't, then the rabbis realize that, okay, you know what, this even though we have, in theory, the authority, this just didn't go through. The people didn't accept it. So in Judaism, we at least we see that there are many levels of authority. We have that in the secular society as well. There are many levels of authority. So yeah, we have in our secular societies, we have the legal structures. So we have our politicians that are deciding what are the rules supposed to be, but they have their advisors and they have their philosophers that they will confer. And then they will have the people who they are seeing and checking, okay, what do the people actually find reasonable? So I think there are many levels to this authority. One of the things that are necessary, though, and that's something which I see today when we're talking about hate speech. What is quite clear to me as a Jew and to the Jewish community in general is that the ability to recognize anti-Semitism is not there anymore in the way it needs to be in order to find the peace, to find some sort of peace, or to make more peace. So we're clearly seeing that the ability to create these rules that we're talking about hate speech, they are clearly being impacted by the inability to actually recognize anti-Semitism when it's there. And this is a problem.
That will probably be the biggest difficulty in finding the different opinions and the limits, because if it's anti-Semitism or anti-black, anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-anything, anti-where are the limits of opinion. That's definitely probably the hardest part of finding peace. I would agree with you there.
But when we are talking about limits, about the free speech, I think again, Karl Popper, who came up with this paradox of tolerance, he has himself a very good measurement, and that is taking into account or evaluating what groups actually have the ability to impact our societies and the tolerance that are prevalent in our societies. So I think that's also that would be another way of trying to say, you know what, we are going to allow certain groups and their opinions, simply because, you know what, we don't think that their impact on our societies are great enough for us to actually become more intolerant than we would like to be, because of course impacting their speech abilities and creating a hindrance to their ability in expressing their opinion is of course creating our societies more intolerant. So there is maybe a way there where we could be pragmatic and say, you know what, this is something which we would like to have less of, but we're actually not going to go in and actually regulate this at this moment, even though it might be a different standard, and where we would say to other people who would have the similar opinion, but there's more of them. Okay, so we would have to try and see, okay, how big of an impact do these people and this group have on our society and the tolerance that we have. So that's another way. Did we move away from our peace topic?
Well, I definitely, well, it's definitely gone a lot deeper than. It's definitely
right.
I would say you've shown me personally what makes peace so hard to achieve. That is definitely the aspect that you, Rabbi Mikkael, have shown me, that why we don't have peace already, because peace would be something so simple, and I think there's not a human being that doesn't want it. I'm sure you want it, your wife wants it, I want it, and I think most of the rabbis that you know will want it. And
yes, of course. I mean, it's we want it, and more than that, we pray for it every day. In every single prayer, as a Jew, we pray 3 times a day, and the part of this prayer is a specific prayer for world peace, and that's so it's something which it's not something just that we pray for. The prayers that our prayers is also a way to each day sort of keep the navigation, the direction is that, okay, this is what we're aiming for, and so it's a reminder. So yeah, world peace is definitely part of daily Jewish perspective and focus. I mean, if I would like to try it, if I could try and bring it down to a more of a personal level, one of the things that I have experienced, I think, here in Bern, dealing with interreligious work and interreligious dialogue, I do think that one of the ways that we could, on a personal level, also in Bern, create more peace in the world is by getting to know ourselves better and getting a better understanding of our own identities. Where do we stand? What do we believe in, and what do these beliefs actually entail? And I think that by being more confident and more secure in our own identities, um, even our own, especially our own religious identities or atheist identities, I think that would go do a lot and go a long way for creating more peace. I think it would be a lot easier for us to understand and to see and to find value in other perspectives if we are confident. Okay, That's not my perspective. This is my perspective. Instead of seeing other people constantly and to say, you know what, I'm not sure if that's my perspective. I'm not sure if that's what I believe. Yeah.
So self-confidence, I think that if that also makes me think, oh, well, if everybody's self-confident in their own feelings and opinion, then we automatically find out where the tolerant level is. If everybody can say, because if everybody's confident in what they want, then I think we automatically have a norm of what is acceptable or not, maybe.
Exactly. I think you're onto something. Clearly, that you know that if you're able to identify these and these and these things are essential to my identity. So when I then look at other ways of living, then that could be, for example, a benchmark to say, or a way to evaluate and to see, okay, do these people actually, do they value this, and if they don't, do they threaten my need? And that's a way to say, okay, you know what, okay, so maybe they don't share my ideas and values, but they might not threaten it. So there you might find a way to say, okay, here I'm able to be tolerant. I might not be pluralistic about their views on education. I might not find value in it, but they're not threatening mine. And as long as they're not threatening mine, then I'm happy to be tolerant. And if they are threatening our ways, then we might have to say, this might be important enough to actually fight for. But that demands that you actually know from yourself and see and know enough about what would you like from your own culture. So it's definitely part of that idea and perspective of being confident and being knowledgeable about, okay, how do we want to build our societies? What's important for my identity? What's important for my kids? Maybe more importantly, what kind of society would we like to give over to our kids?
Definitely an important question. As a parent as well, I feel, what do I want my daughter to be able to live in when she's as old as I am?
Right.
You have given me so much food for thought. I feel I could probably talk to you for another 24 days very easily. And after meeting you and also meeting Christian, when the lockdown is up, I feel I have to come to Bern one day to experience this house of religion.
Lovely. And if you do make it to Bern, really, the synagogue is open. Would love to have you, and we can you could see a service in the synagogue, and you're very welcome. Thanks. It was lovely talking to you, Colin. Good luck with your project.
Likewise. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for everything. Yeah. Thank you. Keep smiling. Thanks. Bye bye. And thank you, Dorothy.
Bye.